I would like to welcome everyone to our session today on the 18th of March, 2021, in the age of Corona. I am very happy to invite Jagannathesvari to lead today's session, otherwise known as Jane Grappa. And she is going to give a talk on the topic of love, its enigmas and its forms.
What is love?
What is love? And just a very brief background. She lives here in London with her husband. She's got a background in literature. She's an author. And she is a student of Srila Prabhupada, who is the founder of the Hare Krishna movement here in the West and all over the world, actually. So it's my pleasure now to invite her to lead the session. Thank you very much, Jagannathesvari, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Sankarshan Prabhu, and all the attendant Vaishnavas. Thank you so much for being here. So today I'm going to talk about love. What is love? Exploring the enigma of love and its various forms. So there are different words for love in some languages have various different words for love according to the context, the relationship, nuances, flavors, intensities of feeling, etc. Sanskrit is the language that has the most names, words for love, which goes into the hundreds, and other languages also, including Arabic, Japanese, Greek, Latin, Italian, French, Spanish. They all have various words for love. In English, we have basically one word. I mean, there are a few different words that are similar, like affection, fondness, adore, cherish, which may be used in different contexts. Like, for example, words like affection and fondness, they may be used in relation with someone that you're not very close to, or for example, if it's a friend of the opposite sex and you don't want to use the word love, which could be misinterpreted as a romantic, because of that's one of the foremost applications of the word. So, but love is the most popular of all the words, and it's used in many different contexts and different relationships. So that's why we're going to be talking about these various forms, first of all. So in this sense, the word love is not nuanced, it's not targeted or specific, but in terms of relationships, it has very wide general usage, but at the same time, it's a very powerful word. And it is inclusive and can be applied in many contexts. Usually, if a word can be applied broadly in many different contexts, it becomes weakened, it becomes diluted. But this is not the case with the word love. The words, I love you, remain always powerful. So we never tire of speaking and hearing these words. Everyone likes to be given love, to share love. In fact, it could be said that the deepest yearning and need of every person is to love and to be loved. Like the Beatles sang, all you need is love, which has become a very famous saying. So love is probably the topmost source of deep and enduring happiness in life. Like C.S. Lewis said, that affection is responsible for 9/10 of whatever solid and durable happiness there is in our lives. So if this is so, it could be said in reverse, that it's the absence of love, which is the greatest source of suffering. And that was mentioned by Dostoevsky in one of his books. He said that what is hell, I maintain, that is the suffering of being unable to love. So love can be considered to be the most powerful antidote for human suffering. So that's just some general points defining characteristics of love, the powers of love. And on the subject of the various forms of love, I'm going to start by highlighting there's 4 words from ancient Greek philosophy, which Plato and Aristotle identified and named these 4 categories of love, which are still well known. Actually, there were a few different categories, but there were 4 main ones, which highlight some of the main contexts in which the word love is used. So those 4 principal ones are storge, or natural affection, which especially applies between parents and children. Then there's philia, meaning affectionate regard, friendship or brotherly love. So that's mainly between friends or siblings. And then there's eros, which is romantic love between men and women. And then there's the 4th one is agape, which is the highest form of love, which is usually applicable between the soul and God. And this can also be extended to include love for all humanity. So these four varieties of love, these 4 categories of love, were also carried through to the Bible, like Saint Augustine, who was the main person who developed a philosophy for Christianity, was actually influenced very much by the classic Greek philosophers, and so these terms have been used. In the Greek version of the Bible, you'll find this word, agape. So the agape is actually the highest, and it encapsulates the pure essence of love. In other words, love that is unconditional and free from selfish motivation. So agape is divine love, primarily between the soul and God, and it can also be experienced to some degree within earthly relationships. So it's mentioned in the New Testament that agape is a charitable, selfless, altruistic, and unconditional. And that also, every relationship also has a spiritual aspect. So this agape can also be experienced in individual relationships, in interpersonal relationships. In moments when we transcend ego and we transcend material desires, like for example, when a sacrifice is performed happily for a loved one, without resentment, without selfish motive, just a selfless sacrifice for someone you love, then that is that can be considered agape also. So We also need to highlight the difference between love and lust here, because eros is romantic love. So the love between romantic partners or husband and wife, it's usually mixed with lust. So because we are influenced by physical urges that ensue from living in a material body, which is perfectly normal for mortal beings. But it's important to understand the difference between lust and love so that we can differentiate between them rather than confusing them with one another, as people often tend to do. So when love is mixed with passion or selfish desire, it becomes tainted, while pure love is selfless. And so the definition of real love or pure love is that it seeks only the pleasure of the beloved. It's meant just to please the beloved. So the difference between lust and love is like the difference between matter and spirit. And it's interesting because Plato talked about this. The word platonic love obviously comes from Plato. And Plato said that the essence of love can be pursued through romantic relationships by those who seek wisdom and spiritual beauty, and who want to evolve from the carnal attraction between the bodies to spiritual attraction between souls. So this is known as platonic love. That's when you hear that expression, but that's where it comes from. Plato's Symposium, where he explains these two types of love or eros: vulgar eros or earthly love, and divine eros or divine love. So the vulgar eros is material attraction to the body, and divine eros it's like it begins the journey from physical attraction to transcendental love for supreme beauty. He talks about beauty in a spiritual way. So while so by learning to love someone deeply in a more spiritual way, then you can appreciate the beauty within the person rather than just being attracted to the outward beauty. And Plato said that that can evolve into a further appreciation of beauty itself, which is coming actually from a metaphysical level. And so eros, this kind of divine eros, which is similar to agape, can help the soul to recall knowledge of beauty and can contribute to an understanding of spiritual truth. And this concept of divine eros was later translated into the term platonic love. So he said that while sexual love results in pregnancy of the body to produce offspring, platonic love results in pregnancy of the soul, which produces virtue. So again, like in my previous talk, I was talking about this virtue and happiness from Greek philosophy. And so in that way, it's connected because love is actually, could be said to be the mother of all virtues, in the sense where there's genuine love, the virtues can be found to bubble up easily. And feelings of genuine love in relationships increase propensities towards virtues like humility, gratitude, kindness, truthfulness, faith, forgiveness, and sacrifice. So regarding the enigma of love, Love is probably the subject of more songs and poetry than any other topic, and yet it is a subject that is shrouded in mystery. Love cannot be studied or analyzed objectively by any empirical process because it is not a physical entity that can be observed or measured with the human eyes. And because it cannot be limited or contained or explained, it is not subject to the powers of reason, logic, or science. Rabindranath Tagore said that love is an endless mystery, for it has nothing else to explain it. Empirical science cannot precisely explain what love is, or where it comes from, or why it exists. Regarding the purpose of love, so from the biologists have their own version. They postulate that the purpose of romantic love is to facilitate procreation of the species. And parental affection is meant to facilitate protection of the young. And even friendship has been said to exist for perpetuating a species through cooperation for defense. But these arguments don't really hold water because in the first instance, regarding romantic love, love between married couples is often seen to increase over time, even after they've finished building a family. So you can't say it's just meant to protect the young. And parental love, it remains strong in humans long after the young have flown the nest. So you can't say that this is for protecting the young or for procreating the species, this kind of love. And then, because there are deep feelings of love between people that extend beyond what's required for procreation, protection, and survival. The laws of nature cannot limit either the depth of feelings of love or the amount of sacrifices that people can be seen to perform out of love. These actions cannot be explained by science. And I found another quote regarding that from Khalil Gibran. He said that love is the only freedom in the world because it so elevates the spirit that the laws of humanity and the phenomena of nature do not alter its course. The only freedom in the world. Even if we were to accept the postulation of some biologists that love is just for procreation, protection, defense, for survival of the species, but then a further question would come up to what is the purpose of survival or of life itself? But philosophical questions like that are not addressed by the empirical scientists or the evolutionary biologists, because they only deal with the hows and not the whys. That part is just not addressed, amazingly. So regarding the source of love, because love is not a material object that can be physically observed or measured, so that means there cannot be a physical or observable source of love. And if the source of love is not physical, the alternative version is that it is metaphysical. Or in other words, transcendental to matter and the laws of nature. This simple logic supports the idea of a higher energy or power that is the source of love, which many people believe. Some believe that the highest reality is a spiritual energy, which is impersonal. And others believe that the highest reality is a personal God. According to the Vedas, according to the Bhagavad Purana, there are three aspects of the absolute truth. There is, which are called Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So Brahman is the spiritual energy that pervades the cosmos. Paramatma is the supersoul, which accompanies every living soul. And Bhagavan is God the person, who is said to be the original source of existence. So in other words, they're not mutually exclusive. So God is a person, he can appear as a person, and he also has his impersonal aspect. And then he also appears as a supersoul accompanying every living entity. So according to the Vedas, God has these three aspects, which are all eternally existing. And the belief that the original form of God is personal is it's supported by all the teachings of all the world religions, but it can also be supported by logic. Firstly, in the sense, it would be illogical and unscientific to propose that living beings with form and personality can be created by an impersonal, formless energy. Because it cannot be possible for a result to possess attributes that are not also possessed by its cause. And secondly, according to what we know and what we experience, love is experienced between people and is reciprocal. And so it's not really sensible or imaginable for someone to be in love with an object or an impersonal energy. We can't experience or imagine being in love with an object or an impersonal energy unless someone has lost their marbles. So it could be said that the existence of love in this world is the most powerful and compelling evidence for the existence of a personal God. Because there doesn't seem to be any alternative, sensible explanation for the original source of love. It's not something that is studied by scientists. And although they experience love and they crave for love just like everyone else, but it's not something that they study or try to understand because it's beyond, way, way beyond the limits of empirical science and the experiments of the laboratories. So if it is God who is the source and powerhouse of love, then his love would be the most powerful and universal. So it is human experience and testimony of the love of God that is the origin of all religions and connects them together. So all the major world religions are, in other words, they're based on that human experience and that testimony of love of God, and that faith, that powerful faith which comes from spiritual experience, which comes from connecting with the source, with the higher power, with the person who is there. So many people have that same experience, that there is God, that he exists, and that they pray to him and he reciprocates with them. So this is the human evidence. This is the evidence of experience. Nowadays, a lot of people feel uncomfortable to talk about God. Like it's like the biggest elephant in the room. There can be many reasons for this, such as mistrust of authority figures, negative experiences of organized religions. Some people might even find the word God a bit scary. But if he is the source and reservoir of love and of all virtues, including compassion, then there's no reason to fear him. But God is not really a name, but it's a title or a position. Because actually he has many beautiful names like Krishna, Jehovah, Allah, Yahweh, Buddha. So many names in the Vedas, for example. He has actually thousands of names. So, but the word God is a generic term that is used universally by all faiths. So that's why we use that name, which is, it's not exactly a name, but it's a term just to denote the Supreme Person who is worshipped in all religions and connected with all people, connected with everything. But people shouldn't be afraid of that. He's, unfortunately, God has received a lot of bad press also. That's another reason why people feel uncomfortable talking about God. And a lot of people say that, well, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious, which means, well, it doesn't really mean a lot if it's analyzed, but what they're trying to say is that they don't really want to talk about God or belong to any organized religion, but at the same time, they do want spiritual experience and they do want to connect with their spirituality. So it's a bit confusing. Yes, God has received a lot of bad press from empirical scientists ever since the bitter divide between science and religion. So from the scientists, the Darwinists, the Marxists, the Freudians, the existentialists, etc. So that's another reason why it's difficult to for a lot of people to relate to the term or to relate to the concept of God, even though people don't want to talk about God, but then you can often hear them saying, "Oh my God," OMG. So why do they say that? That's quite interesting. But yes, the name of the Lord has been misused also for warmongering and killing. But none of these are his fault. I mean, if it is true that God loves us, and at the same time he gives us free will to make our own choices in life, so this means that love, pure love, is invested with freedom. Sometimes people ask the question that if God exists and he is loving, all good and all powerful, then why is there so much suffering in this world? A lot of people ask this question. But this is actually the answer, that if love is invested with freedom, so he gives us free will to make our own choices. And when we make the wrong choice, we suffer. This is the law of karma. But the understanding is that this suffering is meant to purify and reform us. Just like a prison, if we are put in a prison because we commit a crime, then that punishment is meant to reform us. So it could be seen like that. This material world can be seen like a prison where we've come to be reformed, and sometimes we have to suffer because somehow or other we've made some wrong choices. And so we can't really put all the blame on God for that. Because this is meant for our, it's all meant for our own good, is the point. But then it's meant actually to liberate us, ultimately to help us to get out of this material world and to get out of suffering. So sometimes suffering is there to prepare us to get free from suffering, ultimately, for our ultimate good. But then also people ask, why are some people born in suffering conditions and others are born in comfort, in luxury? So then we also have to think about reincarnation together with karma, because it's actually the most plausible explanation. Otherwise, if we don't consider that, it's very, very difficult to find any other explanation. If there's a loving God who loves us, he will not force us to act in a certain way, but he will give us freedom. He will not force us to love him, because love cannot be forced. It has to be a voluntary choice. Otherwise, it's not real love. So that's just all basic logic. So if God is the source of love, then he is also the object of love. According to the Vedas, sensual desire is a material reflection of divine love. And it's described that when souls enter the domain of matter and accept a physical body, their love of God mutates into lust. So in other words, lust is a perversion manifested through the body, physical body, of divine love, which is from the soul. And when we misidentify ourselves with our physical body and try to satisfy our lust, we become vulnerable to fear and anxiety. But real love, spiritual love, on the other hand, it can free people from fear and anxiety. So that's why real love is said to be the ultimate panacea for suffering. And if lust is a material transformation of spiritual love between the soul and God, then it should be possible to transform it back again to that original love. And that is the reasoning behind some spiritual practices, like, for example, bhakti-yoga. It aims to do this by a practical process of developing a higher taste. So those who practice bhakti-yoga, by developing a higher taste for devotional service to the deity, the taste for sense enjoyment becomes naturally reduced. That's the whole rationale behind it. And bhakti-yoga is the yoga of love. And it engages the body, mind, and spirit in activities of devotional service to the deity or to God. It includes recitation of prayers, songs, and mantras, such as the famous Hare Krishna mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This mantra addresses God as Krishna, the all-attractive, and Rama, the reservoir of pleasure, together with his female counterpart, Hara or Radha. So this the similar activities of bhakti as well can be found in every religion. Devotional service, deity worship, chanting of prayers and hymns can be found in every monotheistic religion. So bhakti is not just from Krishna consciousness, but it's also in every religion, because it's the natural propensity of the soul to serve, and the ultimate object of service is the Supreme Person, or God. So just like, for example, in marriage and family life, we experience that our love for one another is strengthened by mutual service. By serving each other, we develop our love, we increase our love for each other. So this concept, this is actually coming from that same relationship is there between the soul of God. And that's what bhakti-yoga is about, is developing a love for God by service, by devotional service. That's how that love is strengthened and revived. And so for married couples who are trying to increase their love of God, they can also, by engaging in devotional service to the Lord, they can also develop a more spiritual love for each other. Because it's ultimately the divine qualities of the soul that attract us to love one another. So through love and service to each other, we can learn to revive our eternal loving relationship with God. Like it said, if we do not love the people we see, how can we love God whom we cannot see? So by learning to love each other, we can learn to love God. And vice versa, by learning to love God, we increase our love for each other. Because if he's the center of everything, then, and if everyone is connected with him, so by developing our love for him, we develop our love for everyone, and what to speak of those who are the closest and dearest to us. So these two types of love, they work together to increase each other. And about learning to love everyone, we tend to love the people we know the best, who are closest to us. And for those of us who are married, beginning with our partner. But every person is potentially lovable. But the people we find the hardest to love are the ones we know the least, because we haven't really yet discovered what's lovable about them, because we haven't gotten to know them. But if we get to know them better, then we would learn to love them too. So, of course, it's not possible for us to get to know everyone in the world in the same way that we know those who are close to us. But it is possible to love everyone, not exactly in the same way that we love our nearest and dearest, but in a more general way, by developing our awareness of the goodness in the soul of everyone, of how much we all have in common, and how we are all related to each other spiritually. Like it says in the Bible, love your neighbor as yourself. So that means to love your neighbor as yourself. It basically means to love everyone and to treat everyone in the same way that we like to be treated ourselves. There's a Sanskrit phrase also, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which means the world is one family. And it's said that those who are broad-minded and magnanimous see the connectedness between everyone and view the whole world as one family. So to see everyone as belonging to one family, it requires a spiritual vision. that sees all souls as children of the same God. And it can be this kind of understanding that, although not always conscious, that motivates people to be philanthropic and do good to others. The word philanthropy basically means to love all human beings. Philanthropy. And this love of God, if it extends to everyone, if we love everyone, then that's supposed to include also those who are considered to be enemies. If we can learn to see that the soul, the innocent, naked soul of all people, stripped of their external designations, then we can awaken the possibility of loving everyone, even those who are inimical towards us. Because anyone who gives pain to others, if we are conscious that of the fact that anyone who gives pain to others must be feeling pain themselves within. So somewhere within every person who is hurting other people, there's a soul calling out for love. It can be said that any behavior that is not love, any behavior that is unloving, is a call for love, because that's what everybody wants. So if we can remember this, then we can learn to feel compassion even for people who are unkind to us. We can try to understand what is their problem. Try to understand that it is their problem, not our problem, if someone doesn't treat us nicely. It's not actually our problem, it's their problem, and so we should feel compassion for them. Love is more powerful than hate because love is a natural function of the heart and soul, whereas hate is an illusion produced by fear and ignorance. There was something that Nelson Mandela said, that no one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. He said that people must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love, because love comes more naturally to the human heart than hate. So one who sees how everything's interconnected and who sees all living beings as sparks of God, he cannot hate anyone. Which means that these so-called religious wars between people of different religions, they're not actually religious, because all religions teach their followers to love and to empathize with all beings as children of God. Genuine love transcends bodily differences and connects the soul to other souls. And love that is truly universal should encompass not only human beings, but also animals, because they are also living beings and they're also souls. Like, for example, people love their pets because they have developed a relationship with the pet by caring for them and getting to know them. So a pet owner would be horrified at the thought of eating their own pet, but they might still eat meat because they haven't become acquainted with the animal who was slaughtered, and so they are emotionally detached from the source of their food. Meat eating requires a shutting down of conscious awareness of the living being that is the source of food and the slaughter that has taken place, that horrible slaughter. And according to laws of karma, unfortunately, there may be serious consequences for people who are implicated in killing. It's like Pythagoras said, that as long as man continues to be a ruthless destroyer of living beings, he will never know health or peace, And that's quite interesting in relation to the coronavirus being a zoonotic virus. He said, as long as men massacre animals, they will kill each other. So those who extend their love and compassion to all living entities, they follow the principles of non-violence and vegetarianism or veganism. Because genuine love expands unlimitedly and does not discriminate between different forms of life. So the power and the influence of love is so great that it cannot be exceeded by anything or anyone else. And according to some accounts, it's said that even God himself, who is the source of love and the source of everything, and the supreme controller, he can be conquered by love. That means that love cannot be controlled even by God. It has free reign. It cannot be controlled by the laws of nature, by logic and reason, or by anyone. And according to some accounts, although God is the supreme controller, he can be conquered by the love of his pure devotee. And this is illustrated in some of the pastimes of Krishna in the Bhagavad Purana, when he subordinates himself to the love of his devotees. So when a devotee fully surrenders to God as a loving servant, then the Lord reciprocates by becoming the servant of his devotee. This is the supreme example of the power of love and trust. To awaken love for God is considered to be the ultimate goal of all religions, spirituality, and life itself. Those who attain this goal become free from fear and anxiety and become detached from the material world. And their only aim in life is to share their happiness with others. So I'll stop there and give you all a break. And we can open up for questions.
Thank you very much, Jagannathesvari. I found your presentation wonderful because it was at once straightforward and pleasing. So thank you very much for taking the time.